I am about to tell you a tale about a reliquary. Well, there are two reliquaries, in fact, but only one saint. Maybe. I will leave it up to you to decide. Some people would say that this tale is fictional, and they're only saying it because it's true. None of the locals, persons, or saints mentioned here exist in reality. The sole reason I wrote this tale is that I found it entertaining. I hope you will enjoy it at least as half as much as I enjoyed writing it. Once there was a monastery. It housed a precious reliquary, gilded and covered in gemstones. However, for people of a religious nature, what was of far greater importance was what the shrine housed. Within it were the relics of Saint Theodore. Many worshippers came to pray before the reliquary, some for their petty problems, others with their world-shattering issues. Whoever came rarely went away empty-handed, for Saint Theodore was known to be a great wonder-worker in his life and a greater still in his death. This reliquary witnessed centuries of petitioners, bishops, abbots, priests, monks, and goldsmiths making a big fuss about it. Then the war came. The land hadn't seen such destruction since the Ottomans. Initially, many refugees came to the monastery, seeking both shelter and divine protection. Monks were quick to point out that Saint Theodore was sheltering his sanctuary beneath his mantle. Now, it is probably true that the saint could delay the destruction of the monastery for quite some time, but even his intercessions are not all-powerful. For whatever reason the providence saw fit, a missile hit the monastery church, practically obliterating it. Some monks and many refugees perished on that day, and all of the survivors fled, fearing future raids. Once the hostilities ceased, the monks returned to their home. Alas, a tragedy far worse than the missile struck. The reliquary was nowhere to be found. At worst, it was obliterated. At best, it was stolen by some impudent soul, no doubt seeking the gold casing and many gemstones embedded in it, both precious and semi-precious. Of course, people still came to the ruined monastery. The donations were eventually collected to restore it to its former glory, but all the monks and their abbot knew that there could be no former glory without their beloved Theodore. Hello everyone! Before we move on with the story, I would like to invite you all to pledge to one of the crowdfunding platforms in the description. It keeps the channel going, and I can devote myself full-time to making biblical imagery and videos like this one. I'd like to introduce you to Mother Euphrosynia, the main protagonist of the upcoming horror story here on the channel. I hope that her story, The Ward, will go online on Halloween. Hush, Mother. We still haven't found a voice actress for you. Back to the story. While the reconstruction was well underway, we will turn our gaze to a different monastery. Same country, but quite further up to the north. A field worker was working in his field, as field workers do, when he caught a glimpse of something blood-red in the tall wheat. He approached the curious sight, and he saw that it was a beautiful velvet cloth. Something was in it, and the worker probably expected a great many things to be in the cloth, but not human bones when he unfolded it. He reached for one, but was suddenly overcome by a great feeling of awe and dread. Everything around him went dark, except for a luminous figure blazing from the place where the bones stood. He heard a majestic voice telling him, "I am Theodore, pleasing unto Christ. Return me to the monastery of my repose." Having recovered from his vision, the man took the bones to the only monastery he knew, that of Holy Ascension. Now, here is the issue when your monastery is dedicated to Holy Ascension. It means it is absolutely impossible to procure any relics of your patron. However, other relics will do just fine. The man asked to see the abbot in private. Of course, the abbot wasn't so impressed of the story of random bones found in the field, especially after the war. Suddenly, his countenance changed. He saw something. He muttered, "Yes, I will." He gathered all of his brethren, telling them that he must notify the bishop. Very soon, a reliquary was made, and services of intercession were conducted. The pilgrims started pouring to the monastery, and with them, miracles. Of course, it did not take too long for the monastery of St. Theodore to catch a wind of this. A sudden recovery of relics with an outburst of miracles? Why, it had to be Saint Theodore. Not wanting to accuse anyone of anything yet, the abbot of St. Theodore's dressed up in a clever disguise. He went to the Holy Ascension Monastery and there could be no doubt about it. The reliquary was different, but he recognized the velvet fabric that covered the bones. He heard the tale of the miraculous finding of the relics, how the apparition called itself Theodore. For a moment, the abbot considered stealing the sacred container, but realizing how this could be seen as imprudent on a number of levels, he ditched the plan and went for a more proper route. He wrote to his bishop. His bishop wrote to the Holy Ascension's bishop. The reply was scathing. I dare not oppose the saint's desire to stay in this monastery, yada yada yada. The first bishop replied, but it is theft, blah blah blah. God works in mysterious ways, and so do his saints, etc., etc. The relations between the two dioceses suddenly became very strained. Who was in the right here? Well, the Lord was about to resolve this problem by making it far more complicated. For you see, the monastery of St. Theodore was still recovering from the bomb raid. Monks are people of flesh and bone. They generally postpone cleaning of attics and basements as we all do. When it was finally time to clean the basement of the monastery, a very, very surprising discovery was made. In an alcove behind a crumbled wall, there was a reliquary. I apologize, I'm bad with articles. Not a reliquary, the reliquary. Within it, human bones. This was a spanner in the works, a fly in the liturgical wine. The abbot spared no moment, and he announced the joyous news to everyone. People had their doubts, but these were quickly quelled when the miracles resumed in the monastery of St. Theodore. Other issues arose. If this is St. Theodore, then who the hell is at the Holy Ascension? Could there be two St. Theodores? The name was common enough, at least for saints, but even then the coincidence was simply too great. And if the Holy Ascension had St. Theodore, whose relics are now located in St. Theodore's old reliquary? The many supernatural signs did not answer this question. In fact, it seemed that these supernatural phenomena started to become more pronounced, outlandish and crass even, as time went. Someone was cured of an incurable illness in St. Theodore's? Well, a man was brought back from the dead at the Holy Ascension. That's nothing compared to an amputee's body, severed by a guillotine, growing back from the head at St. Theodore's. Some said that these two sets of relics competed with one another. Others claimed that the monks were inventing these miracles in order to sway the public to come to their monasteries. Mind you, these are not mutually exclusive claims. During these wars of the miracles, a bright mind had an idea. There was a way to resolve this once and for all. He made the two abbots and their respective monks meet. There was a palpable atmosphere of disdain all around. The young man said, "There is a way we can find out if both of these relics belong to St. Theodore." "Well, what is it?" asked the abbot of the Holy Ascension Monastery. "We can use the great gift God has given us. Science! Thanks to DNA analysis, we can check if there is a match between two relics. If so, we know that both of them are St. Theodore." The other abbot expressed the concern everyone else has had. "But what if there is no match?" "Well, if there is no match, at least we'll know we're dealing with two saints. We probably won't know with absolute certainty which of these two is the real St. Theodore, but there is a chance that at least some of the controversy is solved." This convinced both abbots and two monastic brotherhoods. Collections were made for the analysis, which was quite pricey for a technology so new in a country torn by war. Bishops weren't motivated to help out monetarily, seeing far more pressing issues, but they gave their respective blessings. If these two groups can make peace, that's one less problem for them to deal with. Money was collected. Samples were sent. Prayers and intercessions were said before the reliquaries, asking for God's aid in this regard and, in much hushed tones, begging St. Theodore to prove that their own vessel housed his remains. The results came back in a sealed envelope. The oldest monk of the two monasteries from the Holy Ascension was given the honor to read the results before the assembled monastics. He cleared his throat. You could hear heartbeats in the old refectory of St. Theodore's. The monk adjusted his spectacles, and with a very solemn voice he declared, "After conducting the necessary research on the two samples you provided, our analysis shows, beyond a shadow of doubt, that the two skulls belong to two separate individuals.